It's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. I member of the Pod Bros Podcast Network. Don't forget to go to podbros.com and find yourself another podcast you want to listen to. And don't forget to check out our sponsors, Trap and Roll Soap Company, as well as Tape Armor. I'm Rob, and today I'm here with Chewy. And some of you may know this man from his amazing Facebook videos that he posts up. I think the last one in particular I watched was based on Remember Why You Started Training. That was a really good one I enjoyed. And so Chewy, I really do appreciate you coming on the show today, man.
Hey, no problem, brother. Glad to be here.
Cool. So how did you, well, we'll get the big stuff out of the way. I want to know how you got started in jiu-jitsu. Like, really interested in that.
Jiu-jitsu. So, I guess the short answer for jiu-jitsu is that I wanted to fight. When I was younger, I grew up and I was wrestling, and it has to go back to wrestling. So I started in wrestling, and after wrestling was done in high school, I was going to a college that did not have a wrestling program, and I still wanted to do something that was competitive. And I had started to kind of get back into UFC because I'd watched it when I was a kid. And then later on, like, one of my buddies came over the house and, like, he brought this Pride. It was like Pride 15, the one with who was it? It was Rampage versus Sakuraba was on that card.
Yes. And
we watched it, and like Mark Kerr was on it and all these big guys. And so it was really neat. And so we got into mixed martial arts, and then, so we all, me and some friends from wrestling, we all wanted to do jiu-jitsu. So that's what got me into jiu-jitsu, was the desire to want to fight and continue to compete in something after wrestling was over.
So it was just kind of like a way to just keep it going. And then once you saw Sakuraba and Rampage going, you're like, yeah, let's see if we can get into this a little bit more.
Well, I suppose my thought process was I wanted to fight mixed martial arts, and then I wrestled. And so I was like, well, watching fighting, because after I saw the Pride 15, I started to just watch tons and tons of videos. And I mean, from the time that I got back into MMA to the time that I actually did my first jiu-jitsu class was about 2 years. And so I'm just like watching all these matches and everything else. And, I watched the guys that could wrestle and then the guys that could do jiu-jitsu. And you're like, well, I guess if you combine those two, right? Like, you learn how to wrestle, take the person down and get on top of them, beat them up a bit and then submit them. It seems like that would be a really efficient way to fight. So I was like, I need jiu-jitsu more than I do something else. And so that's what kind of got me into it.
And how did you find the transition from your wrestling to jiu-jitsu? Was it like easy, or was there like some bad habits you get a break?
There's definitely some bad habits. I mean, it wasn't terrible, I know this sounds funny. Me and some friends, before we made it into the jiu-jitsu class the first time, we were like wrestling around and like trying to submit each other and stuff, and piecing together with what we could from videotapes. But when I got to my first jiu-jitsu class, I remember I was actually doing a move last week during one of our leg lock classes. In wrestling, when you take, say, for instance, for people listening, when you get to the turtle position, typically we don't basically split the legs in jiu-jitsu because the person can roll through for a knee bar. Well, in wrestling, you absolutely do that. You hook the leg, and it makes it much more difficult for them to stand up, and it helps you break them down to their stomach so that you can pin them. And so I remember my very first roll with my coach at the time, the purple belt. I got behind him, got to turtle, and I hooked his ankle with my leg, and he rolled right through for a knee bar. So that was like the very first submission that I ever had from, my coach at the time. And so like there was that. And then obviously giving up your back was a big issue, but the normal stuff, but it wasn't too bad because I kind of committed to jiu-jitsu. So I was like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. And eventually you got to, like, obviously you've done very well in jiu-jitsu, but we do have some guys who come into our club as well that were wrestlers, and, the transition's either really easy or really rough, but there are always those bad habits. Not really bad habits, because in wrestling, it's like really good habits. Nobody wants to go right on their back because that's obviously a good way to get pinned really quick. But,
well, I feel like people, like wrestlers, because I've had wrestlers like that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I have like several guys in the gym that are college wrestlers who took the transition really well, and then I have some college wrestlers that have been in here before that, like they trained with me for a long time. They still couldn't get it. And a lot of times what I sort of narrow it down to is, the commitment to it, like they still see themselves as a wrestler first and then a jiu-jitsu guy second, right? Whereas the other guys were like, no, I'm a grappler. I'm a jiu-jitsu practitioner. That's what I'm doing. I have wrestling, but that's just a part of it, And so I've seen where the guys can't just let that desire go, like where they always have to get the takedown and they always have to be on top and they can't play on their back, those sorts of things. And that's more of kind of a mental commitment to it because, they can't let that person that they used to be can't let them go.
So kind of like they need to like you said, like, or just it's their identity and they kind of have like this hard time letting go of that identity.
Absolutely. Because they're the wrestler, like I'm the wrestler. So then if like they go on their back, right? Because if you come into a gym and you're good at wrestling, well then, okay, well, no matter what, I can get the takedown and I can be on top. I'm good at that. But then you pull guard or something, you're taking that away from you, and so you have to kind of be okay with, sucking for a little bit from those bad positions. I know I was the same way. Like when I first started, my thought process was if I end up in guard, I'm just going to kick the person away, stand up, take them down. And then, you know what I mean? And then I remember like going up against guys who were better wrestlers than me. And I was like, oh, well, I better learn how to play off my back then, don't I?
Yeah, change can be difficult. And what's funny too is like, even in classes, I kind of just came to this realization, I suppose, that you're always going to have the guys like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, he's the wrestler.
Right.
That always happens in the gym. Somebody's always labeled as the wrestler if they've had some wrestling background.
Absolutely. I agree.
So for your transition, you've gone from wrestling to jiu-jitsu, and you did from student to teacher as well. So when did you start teaching? And was there just kind of like did you show up and you're like, screw it, we'll see what happens when I teach a class? Or was there some deep want or just desire to start teaching classes?
I first started teaching back when I was a blue belt, like intermittently for my coach, because, again, jiu-jitsu is such a different animal than what it is now. And so when we first started off, we were in like a little variety room inside of a weightlifting gym. And when my coach would have to leave for different reasons or whatever, I would typically be the person that would fill in for him because I sort of worked my way up the totem pole. Again, I was maybe a blue belt when I started teaching. And then I didn't really start teaching an actual full-on class until I was late into my purple belt, and that happened because I just asked because I there was all this stuff that I wanted to like because what would happen is when I came to this new gym that I'm at now, because when I left my instructor at the time, I came to this gym, trained here, was having a great time, and I found that it was really helpful for me when I would like get some of the guys during open mats on Sundays and like would work on things that I needed to work on. I would work on them with them. I would show them how to do them. And like, I found that really helpful for me personally. And so I asked my coach, Colin, I was like, hey man, I was like, do you mind if I just taught a class, maybe a beginner's class, just let me teach something,
right.
And he gave me one class a week. It was on a Wednesday as a no-gi class. And that's when I actually started teaching on some regularity. And then from there, it sort of grew at different times.
So from going from there, this is like the most interesting transition I wanted to hear about. The teaching, like you're beginning teaching to now being a recognized YouTube, social media, like personality in the jiu-jitsu community. Like how did that transition happen?
Man, as far as the whole YouTube and social media thing, it just sort of happened. What I was doing was putting up videos that were helpful for my guys. Like all those drilling videos, a lot of times those were moves for my students because basically the guys come in at different times and some of them so what would happen is like guys would come into the gym and they would say like, hey Chewy, can you sit down for a second and show us some of those drills? And then I was like, sure. Or I'd see guys where they would come in and they would say, oh, because we have a big Facebook group for all of our members. And so they would say, hey guys, who wants to come in and drill? They wouldn't actually drill. They would get there, they would talk for a little bit, and then they would just start rolling. And so what I was doing was I was like, hey guys, like a lot of times my guys know we do the drills a lot, so they know what they are.
Yeah.
So here are some videos where if you need to cross-reference this stuff, like, oh, what was that move again? I can look this up on these videos and just give them something to work off of. It's not necessarily going to encompass everything, but at least it's something. And then those sort of just other people just, I guess, enjoyed watching them, and then it just sort of picked up.
That's awesome. I mean, that's like a really cool transition to it. So something else that you have on your YouTube page, it's not just drilling, it's not just moves, it's you giving just advice to the videos as well. Was that something you just layered in as well to give some, I don't say it's definitely not fluff. I mean, like another layer of your YouTube presence to help people train instead of just showing moves. You're also giving them like legit advice from a jiu-jitsu practitioner.
Well, sure. Well, I mean, the big thing for me was, again, I started doing those because all of a sudden people were jumping on board, right? Like they're like, hey, man, I'm watching this guy, and they're asking questions at times. Like that was really where they came from because I was posting techniques and some drills, but I would get questions that would be asked me, even from my students. I think some of my early questions were from students. And what it was is a lot of times people are, it's kind of like, in other areas of life, right? You're focused on like, you feel like you're missing something, right? Like there's something that's outward that you're missing that you need to bring into the mix that you need to fix the problem that you have. And a lot of times it's not that. It's like, it's more of an inward thing. And so a lot of times there have been lessons that I've learned over the years through jiu-jitsu and grappling that were not outward things. Like it wasn't a technique that I had that fixed the problem. It was like, oh, I had to let go of the frustration of a position, or I had to, adjust the way that I was training to fix the problem, those sorts of things. And so there's a lot of lessons that you get through jiu-jitsu that have nothing to do with techniques. And so it's basically that became my attempt to like, hey man, if you really want to get better at this stuff, let me help you out in another way that's not related to techniques, because there's a lot of amazing people out there doing, what I would consider far better techniques than me. But I was like, this is something that I can share with you just because I don't know, man. Like I just remember all this stuff. And so like when I talked to my white belts and my blue belts and purple belts, basically all I did was take the conversations that I was having with them and started recording them, in camera. And then with the new questions that come in when people ask questions now I just take those as if they were my student. Hey, you're sending me this question. I'm going to share an experience with you from something that I had, or give you sort of an idea to think on, and then hopefully give you something that's useful to help you through training.
No, I do find that very useful, especially like you said, it's if you're just taking legitimate conversations, because everybody's going to ask kind of the same, question at some point. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to have some of the same frustrations or the same plateaus and stuff. So, they always talk about like the dumbest question is the one you don't ask.
Absolutely.
So
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I think you're definitely covering down on a lot of people who are just kind of, shit, I don't know if I want to ask Professor that because it's going to sound stupid. Like, oh, I'm frustrated because I can't pass guard.
Well, and see, that's the thing that boggles my mind is like, because I talked to some of these, because, I didn't think when I started getting some questions in, I'm like, man, and that's why I always preface a lot of the videos with, man, this is my opinion. Don't forget to ask your instructor. And so I would ask people like, well, have you asked your coach this? And they're like, well, I don't want to ask him because I don't want him to get mad at me or something. And I'm like, and again, from my standpoint, again, like, I tell my students all the time, if you have a question, come ask, man. That's what I'm here for. You know what I mean? Like that is my job, man. That's my purpose, is to make you guys better at this stuff. And so, if you have to ask a question, let's do it, and unfortunately, it seems like in some cases, maybe it's perceived on the people's part that are asking the question. But it's been a bunch of them where they say that they don't feel like they have a good connection with their coach, where they feel like their coach might blow up on them if they ask a certain question that's maybe, or disrespect them or whatever, that sort of thing. And, unfortunately, I've seen it a couple times in my own eyes where I go to other gyms and I see the coach talking to him, and I can't help but, feel like, man, maybe you kind of forgot your way, because we were all brand new guys at some point before, so like you said, it's not a stupid question. If they have a legitimate question that's bothering them, it's what's on their mind. It maybe not be yours, but it's not dumb.
Now that actually does bring me to, I guess an interesting topic is the like you're talking about instructors and stuff, kind of maybe losing their way and whatnot. But, as we've talked before on this podcast, we've come across people talking about like, hey, this instructor is kind of like, talking about creance and, gym loyalty and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it turns out that, you're paying money to have a service still, regardless. Yeah. And if it's like an old school mentality, or it's still kind of keeps going, but is there like, I don't know, because, I'm just a purple belt. I see some of it. I may not, I can't really respond on how I'd act as a black belt because I don't have a black belt yet. Mm-hmm. But go ahead. I was going to say, is there like something that you've seen or maybe just noticed that kind of like hits a disconnect with some people that makes them start acting that way, or is it just kind of ingrained in them?
Man, I don't know. I don't know if it's certain people's like dispositions. Sometimes that maybe they're just predisposed to being this way. A lot of people talk about, losing the ego, but man, I've seen multiple times, a lot where like that ego, once you get that black belt, it seems to peek its head back out, and guys change like, and as far as the instructors losing their way, I think that, for me, man, like, again, when you think about what you're doing, you have again, we've all taken some sort of benefit. There's some sort of benefit that transcends just training, right? Again, if you were just learning how to choke people, you probably wouldn't do jiu-jitsu. You'd be like, this is cool. Whatever. I'm not going to, whatever. But there's some sort of benefit that you get that makes you feel a certain way, that conjures up a certain emotion, that makes you feel so good when you do it, that transcends any of that stuff, right? And so we all get this benefit to it, and along with the training and the skills that are also acquired, and you have the chance to take those and share those with people. That's a really cool fucking job, right? There's a really cool thing that you can do. And then if you think, okay, like, again, when these people come in, that's your purpose. Now, as far as loyalty goes, I think that loyalty is fine as long as it's reciprocal, right? Because again, you pay a service. So in turn, I am supposed to reciprocate with good training and involvement with you. If you're, I've seen guys where some instructors are cashed out. They're just there. They're literally like teaching the move. And as soon as the class is over, they're like, boom, I'm out of here. Fuck this. Like, I'm done. You know what I mean? They're not going to talk with their students. If their student has a question, like, hey man, that'll be a private lesson, whatever. I've had students come to this gym from other gyms where they say that. They're like, yeah, man, I came to this gym because when I was at my other gym, like, I didn't roll with my coach for 4 years, even though we rolled with other people. And I felt like I was a dollar sign, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. And again, there's a balance you have to have, because you have to run a business. It has to be successful, because you got to keep the lights on and you got to keep the machine going. But at the same time, you have to have those personal connections with people, because what we're doing is a very personal thing. And I feel like there's some weird disconnect that happens where these guys get to this position where they're like, you're supposed to show me blind loyalty, rather than I will be loyal to you as an instructor, and I'm going to give you everything that I have, and I'm going to work diligently to continue to improve my process and improve the experience that you have. And then in return, you'll be loyal to me because you know that I'm working and I'm in this for your best interest, right? And so I think that's where it should be. It's not blind loyalty just because it's it's loyalty rather because I know this person's in it for me. And because they're in it for me, I'm in it for them too. And it's sort of a cycle, right? I think I danced around a little bit there, but I think that I touched on the question that you asked.
No. You perfectly answered it. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, you talk about the blind loyalty, or that's what I brought up, and it's, I have seen it as well. And like you said, sometimes when people throw on the black belt, the ego does come out a little bit. And I mean, granted, it is probably one of the biggest accomplishments, at least in our world, in jiu-jitsu.
Sure. It's a huge accomplishment.
Because everybody, the end goal should be at least training until you can't train anymore. But I can't make everybody do that,
Absolutely.
So when you see somebody reach that black belt, it's a very amazing experience. And, some people outside jiu-jitsu don't understand it, but within the community, it's a very big thing. And when they don't understand it, but if they understand what goes into it, then it's like, oh man, that's a huge accomplishment. Again, the belt doesn't mean everything, but it's a big deal. Yeah, it definitely is. And but I mean, that is interesting that people come to your school as well to obviously seek out good advice. And with running the gym, that's something that I think a lot of people romanticize as well.
Mm-hmm.
That it's you show up, you got your black belt. You can, you've won some tournaments, and now money's going to fall from the sky.
Not even close, brother.
Yeah. So what, without getting too much into your business, because, that's not, we try not to ask people about how the specifics, but like, what's a typical day like for you when you're running your gym?
Well, I'm always running the gym. But that's the thing. It's funny because, I had a job years ago where, I did the same thing. I romanticized about it. I would be driving my car and I'd wake up in the morning, like, man, I wish I could teach jiu-jitsu and just do this for a living. And then now that I do it, like, I realize that, again, I love what I do, but it's a lot more than what you thought originally. You got there and you're like, whoa, this is way different. The days are really, they're really flexible. There's a lot of adjustment going on, but basically, typically, 5:30, 6, wake up. I'll make breakfast, do all that stuff, and then I head to the gym. I get to the gym. I typically do a lot of my, I would say, creative work in the morning before everything gets going. And then right after that, typically classes start around 11. I teach and train for an hour. And then after that, I'll typically take a break. If I'm lifting that day, I will typically lift sometime in the mid-afternoon. And then I teach some, and see, like this is where it's all over the place, because some nights, like on a heavy night of teaching, I'm teaching 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 classes in a day. And then on a light day, maybe 2. Like today is kind of a light day, so I just taught 11 o'clock. I have some work. I have some meetings with some of my instructors later on today to do some, basically just get them to, we do a weekly meeting together to make sure we're all on the same page.
Right.
And then I'll teach a 6 o'clock class, some beginners, right? And let my black belt Chad is going to be teaching one of our advanced classes tonight at 7. So, I mean, but it's all over the place. And so I have basically, I sit down and I have like a thing of like on a Sunday, I'll sit down and write all the goals, like the big things that I would like to hit that week. And then from there, it's like, it's very free form and flexible. I'm to a regimented thing. It's like, I need to hit this, this, and this. And I don't care how I get it done. That's what my goals are that week. So that's kind of where it is. It's very like all over the place. So it's hard to give you an exact day, but it's a good amount of work.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of see also, like, it starts for you at 6 and then like ends probably 9ish maybe.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I can take off. I mean, like I have the instructors that I need to. I don't have to be here all the time. You know, I mean, like I understand. You know, this is something where you understand. Like sometimes, for me, like one of the big things as far as being a business owner, right, running a gym, I love being the guy in the trenches, right? I love being the guy that's in the thick of it. Right? That's what makes me the happiest, is being on the mats with the guys. But I understand the value of being the guy that's in like headquarters, like moving pieces around on a map, trying to figure out the big picture, to make sure the whole thing works. And so I've had to balance and sort of balance those two people, because I felt very guilty initially pulling myself away from the mat to do those things, but it's helped the gym tremendously over the years. And it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But so yeah, and it's like, so a normal heavy night, right, would not end until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Yeah. So starting off at about 6:30. And so I'll do that. You know, I try not to do that too many times during the week, but that would be at least 2 nights a week would be at least that heavy.
Wow. Yeah. Because, you know, if you got a lot of people showing up, you have to have a lot of classes to accommodate them all as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I mean, we've got a monstrous gym. You know, I don't know what the absolute standards are of the day, but we've got a really big gym, both in overall size, but also the member base.
Now, with jiu-jitsu, of course, always comes people who want to compete. Do you guys have a good competition, like not focused, but more like, is there a core group of people who like to compete, and then you've got like other sporadic groups of people who just like training or self-defense, or what's it kind of?
Yes. So, I mean, yeah, just like that, like we have the whole, you know, group. I think the last time I looked at it, our total jiu-jitsu numbers were right around like 200 as far as students go.
Holy shit.
And then, you know, we have, you know, maybe 10% of those guys are like competitors. Like they like competing on a regular basis. And then we have like another 10%, right? And maybe 10, 15% that are just like, maybe we'll do one, you know, sometime. Like they do them sporadically.
Right.
And then the other group, they have no desire to do them. They don't want to do them. They don't care. They're there to train. That said, I make sure everybody knows that when you train here, you will have the tools necessary to do so if you want to. So everybody, like, we train hard, but we train with a smile on our face. You know, I mean, everybody gets down. Like there's no like, you know, because the thing is like every one of those competitors that goes out, like we've had guys win, you know, some big titles before. And every one of those guys that wins those titles is a direct reflection of all the training partners that he has. I mean, because, you know, one of the students said it the other day, he thought it was kind of a neat thing. I mean, you could come in, you know, in the morning classes, come in the evening classes, and you'll see different people. You know, I mean, like you won't even see the same people over and over again. So you get different bodies, different looks. And it's great for, you know, getting people ready for competitions and that sort of thing.
Nope, that's a really good way to have it as well. Like the same thing I've noticed going from different schools is the morning class is always different than the evening class, different instructors, different groups, and that actually like rounds you out really well. And for being the head guy yourself, and I guess going back to kind of the instructor talking to people or people being afraid to talk to their instructor, do you find it difficult to keep track of 200? You said about 200 students in jiu-jitsu. Keep track of them, like their goals, their focuses, what drives them, maybe like some of their fears and worries. Like, do you find that difficult, or is that kind of just as you get to know them, it's a little easier every time?
Well, I mean, I spend a ton of time on the mats, right? Like, so even if I'm not teaching, like for instance, tonight, I'm not teaching the 7 o'clock class that tonight's off for me because we'll have some other training sessions. So, you know, later on this weekend. And so after 6 o'clock, I'm teaching, but I'm not going to be really training that hard tonight. And so I'll spend a lot of time doing, you know, mat chat, just hanging out with people, getting to know them, you know, and again, it's not something that I do because I'm trying to be fake or whatever. It's because I enjoy getting to know these people that are here training. And so I can help them. And then also, I mean, there's a certain sense of gratitude that I have. Like, look, man, like it makes me feel really, humbled that you have so many other things that you could do with your life, but you spend the time, the money, you endure the drive, and you put your body at, risk to come in here and train with me. So let me give you 100% while I'm here. If I'm inside the gym, like, I'm yours, right? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn? I want to help you. And so as far as that goes, like it's tough to get to know like every single person deep down, and it's tough to know everybody's goals. But, the thing is you try to help people out with the technical stuff, but you also try to help people out again with the mental stuff that doesn't really get touched on as much, so that people can find their inner motivation and let that lead them. You know what I mean? Because that's what we all need. It's not outside of you. It's inside of you. That's what you need. And you got to find that thing that drives you forward, regardless of whether or not, you have the motivation. You know what I mean? You have to find the thing that really helps you develop the discipline to want to keep training, even when it gets tough. And so I try to, again, just like I do in the videos, I do the same stuff in the classes. I'm just talking about stuff to let them know, look, I've been there before, and try to give them some sort of insight on the problems that I see or hear about. And, you know what I mean? So, that usually helps. But again, you can't help everyone. And that's where like having other instructors like Chad and some of my other guys like John and several of them, they kind of come in, you're a military guy, so you kind of understand the top down structure, right? Like you have, you start at the top and he sees everyone, and then and then each time you go down, each group has each leader has a smaller little group of people. And so it ends up kind of happening like that, where, each instructor under me, they have certain like guys that are sort of not under them even officially, but, they have people that they sort of take a liking to, and they kind of help them out a little bit. And, if you train people, with that sort of openness, they tend to have a way of doing it and paying it forward to the people that come afterwards, which kind of helps. We sort of just grab each other and pull each other along together.
No, that's really awesome. Like, no, I do understand it, because you will see other instructors just kind of just gravitating towards people and helping them out. So, no, it's a perfect way to run it and get to know people, because I know one of these scarier things, like even trying to be the big tough guy, is going in there not knowing anybody,
right?
And be like, shit, I just got myself into this fight club, right? It's I saw Fight Club. This is what it's all about. You got like this Conor McGregor guy over here who's probably going to kick my ass real bad. So people go in there and can be real nervous about it. It's a sport where people grab onto each other. So, is there any way that you just mat talk with them, get them used to it, help them out, or do you do like anything in particular for new students?
Well, I mean, we have beginner classes. I mean, beginner classes are super helpful. I've heard differing views on this, right? Like some instructors are like, no, I don't need beginner classes. Throw them to the wolves. If they stick, they stick. If they don't, I don't want them in here anyway. I had a guy like talk about he doesn't even like white belts. He doesn't even want them in his gym. Wow. He's like, if they want to stick around, they stick around. I was like, okay, man. My thought process is that we have some good classes where you can get down. You know what I mean? Like where you can get in there, you can get a hell of a workout. You can really get after it with each other, and that's what they're there for. But we also have some beginner classes that are geared towards just the fundamentals over and over and over again. Lots of drilling, lots of technical stuff, lots of basic fundamental techniques and knowledge. And the purpose of those is so that this way, when those new guys come in, like we can ease you into the process. And the way that I think about it, man, is if there's people that are out there, some guys are just not going to stick with it, no matter how well you put everything together. They're just not going to stick with it. It's not for them. But you got these guys also on the other end that are going to stick with it no matter what. And then you've got these guys in the middle that are like, they can go either way. And if you can like sort of pull them along gradually to the other side, you can get them to become lifers. And we've had several guys like that. Like, one of the guys I've talked about in some of the videos that I do for our gym is we had a guy named Ben Fowler. He came up to the gym. He was really overweight. He was about 270 plus pounds at the time. And he would drive up, put his car in park, look up at the sort of the glowing sign at night, get really nervous, and then drive away. He did this for 6 months.
Wow.
6 months. And then so he finally stepped into the gym, and he said that he was so nervous because he was just, again, the perception of what it is. And he comes in and he's like, oh my God, this, everybody was so nice and it was a good time. I had a blast. Like I'm pissed off that I waited so long to do it, but, I don't know, man. Like, all the guys here are pretty inviting. So it's not like we go out, like do anything different. We're just like a bunch of goofs having a good time and training hard. So it's like, if you don't feel invited with us, it's pretty hard not to,
No, an inviting environment, or inviting environment, no shit.
Inviting environment
That's
and
really
having
good.
some beginner classes that will basically help these beginners to where they don't feel so damn stupid when they start,
Yeah.
because if you can go over someone's head and they'll instantly just think, this isn't for me. But if you like give them a little short win, like, oh man, I learned this cool move today. I learned how to do a key lock today, right?
Yeah.
Damn, it feels good. I have a submission now, right? Like you give them little wins, and that kind of helps them sort of get a taste of what they're getting into.
No, that's very understandable, and I think that works out really well. I mean, granted, I've been to places, like I said, with both classes does help out. So, now something I don't see a lot of schools do. I don't know if you do it as well. Do you have like a lot of gym get-togethers, maybe like going out as a team to help build that team atmosphere, or
All the time.
all the time? Like,
All the time.
what's some of your favorite things to do?
Well, we just had like we've always done a Christmas party. We've done a Christmas
Yeah.
party for the last several years, and then this year we got together and we rented a room at one of the like local clubs. Like they had like it's not like a club. It's more of like it's a weird thing to explain, but it's basically down to like the sort of the bar area of town. We rented this room and we opened it up to all the members, and we took care of the food and at least some of the drinks for them,
Yeah.
and as a thank you, and brought everybody together, and it was a good time. We had a big gift exchange. We played pool. Had some drinks together. We'll go out for dinner a lot. We'll just whatever the things, go see movies or something like that. Like saw a movie with a couple of the guys of the day. I'm getting ready to take some of the instructors, and we're going to do a bourbon tasting at this bunch of guys together, have some drinks. I'm going to go over some information, but more than anything, it's about getting them out of the place where we normally are,
Right.
and getting them together somewhere else. So we do a lot of little gym get-togethers, and they can just range from nothing in particular to spontaneous little, hey, like let's go get some burgers. Like the I think it was the other day there was in Facebook, like we have a Facebook group that's pretty active where we're all kind of like get together, a private group, and and like someone's like, hey man, like is anybody out on this side of town? And like I was like, oh yeah, I'm over there. Like, hey, let's get together. That kind of thing. So we try to do those things just because it really, I don't know, man. Like I think as humans we all want to feel a part of something, right?
Right.
And so if you can bring people together and make them feel like they're a part of a team rather than it's just a gym, that's a different thing. And so for me, that's one of the things that I always got from jiu-jitsu. It was being a part of a team. I know that when I first started, the environment was much smaller, so it was much easier to do that. And as it's gotten bigger, I still want to try to facilitate that sort of team connection where you feel connected to the people around you rather than just I'm here to do my time and get my exercise and then get out of here. I'm here because it's an escape from the outside, and it's a place where I feel like I belong and where I get to see these people that I feel really connected to.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of people mainly go not for the exercise is great, but I like going to see my friends and hanging out with them. And if I get beat up all day, whatever, it's cool. But I get to do my friends get to beat me up, and then
Right.
it's a bad enough day. We'll go get a beer afterwards. But no, it's it is good to see people that are not treating it like like you said, just dollar signs and whatnot. Like I think what we started at the beginning, people just show up, look up, I'm a black belt, everything, where's my money?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and I think that it's let's use a jiu-jitsu analogy for this, huh?
okay.
So like, because I know that when I first got started with this stuff, I know the feeling of being like, like cramped for money and all that stuff.
Yep.
I get it. I understand completely. But think of it this way. Like a lot of guys will send me a message where it'll be like, I need a technique, just like we talked about earlier, right? I need the technique.
Yeah.
What's the technique? What is that thing that's out there that I need? And then they get their eye on the wrong thing. They ask the wrong question, right? It's not about the technique. It's about something that you have to deal with yourself, or there's a condition that's present that you have to deal before before you can talk about the techniques. This has to be taken care of, right? You're not fighting the grips. We have to do this first before we can talk about adding techniques or whatever it might be. Likewise with the business, people are thinking, I want that money, right? I'm doing the jiu-jitsu. I've won these world titles or whatever stuff you want to say. Where's I want this money now. And then they're not saying like, well, what am I doing for these people? Like, again, it's a reciprocity type thing, right? Like, what am I doing for these people to want to give back to me, right? Because again, it's a service, right? And it's a cyclical thing. So again, if you give back to those people, I believe this, the more you give back to those people, the more that will come back to you. And so I think that a lot of times people get so, if money gets tight, instead of like saying, look, hold this sort of direction that you have of serving these people, hold that. Instead, they start to ring people out. Hey man, I got to charge you this much money now for this belt, or I've got to do this, that, or whatever. And it's like, no. Like, that's not the way. Like, you're worried about nickels, instead of dollars. So it's, going back to that, I think just a lot of times people, if they aren't familiar with business at all or haven't been in the sort of the industry long enough, I think a lot of times they ask the wrong questions or focus on the wrong things.
Right. And it's unfortunate because I think there are a lot of talented people out there who kind of take the wrong approach to it, maybe, or just aren't educated enough to take the right approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now with, I know I'm guilty of jumping all over the place myself. So
I mean, you already hear me, dude. I'm all over the place, man. So it's okay.
No, because I'll say something, I'm like, and I'm listening to your response, like, oh shit, ask him about that too. I try not, what I try not to do in these things is come in with a straight list of questions, because
and I appreciate that, because a lot of times I've heard podcasts, I listened to one of yours and I was like, cool, man. It's not going to be the normal, I've got 12 questions to ask you. And because, there's a lot of times where I've heard these podcasts where, like you said, some guy will say something really interesting and then they'll just blow right past it. I'm like, no, go back to that. Ask that guy that thing. I want to know more about what that was, So I appreciate it. It's a little bit more free form and you can just kind of bullshit a little bit more.
No, well, I'm glad you like it, because that's what I want. I want I want Chewy. I don't want the prepared statement of Chewjitsu. You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. You get the statement where where they say what they want to say, and then afterwards you get that weird laugh. It's it's so
shit,
vague, man. That's not even a real laugh, dude. Come on. Give me some, let the guy talk and then actually have some conversation about something,
Right. And it does blow my mind, because some people are also shy away from controversial stuff as well. So I try not to jump right into it, but something that I was.
Is this where you're laying the controversial stuff down?
Yeah, I'm about to. No, actually, I'm really not, because I was thinking, because the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show, we've got a Facebook page and stuff, and I get some wild shit every once in a while. And I don't know, do you what are some of the challenges of doing social media for you, and what are some of the weirdest social media things you've had happen to you? Maybe somebody contacting you, or I like to go back to the guy that we said, if you buy a Big Jiu-Jitsu shirt, post up a picture of it and we'll post it on the webpage. Okay. And this guy didn't have a Big Jiu-Jitsu shirt on, but he would continuously post a picture of him in a wife beater, khaki pants, and a belt with a cell phone. Do what?
So he's just being a troll.
Maybe. I don't know. But he was in his 50s. So I don't know if he was he looked like he was, I don't know if he was being a troll or he was just straight up, but he was in a gym flexing with his cell phone.
It's getting swole, bro.
Yeah. I was like, whatever, man. But it was just, that was one of the weirder ones. But
oh man, the internet's such a strange place, isn't it?
It is, man. I love it though.
It's a lot of fun, but it's strange sometimes. Let's see. So you had two questions there. One was the weirdest, sort of strange occurrences, and one was the big, what was the first one? It was something
about
the
challenges of doing social media. What are some of the challenges you find? It doesn't even have to be real business specific. It's
the big challenges, man. Honestly, I'm not that I mean, man, it took a lot for me to decide to do some of those videos. You know what I mean? I did them because people said they were helpful. So well, that's motivation. I'll keep helping people because that's what I do on a daily basis. My students, they said, oh, man, these videos are really helpful. And I can use these videos later on to share with my new guys that come in, and it'll be it'll be helpful to them even more so. Right.
Yeah.
So you're just helping a lot of people all the time. But it took a lot for me to do that because I'm not that kind of person. I don't there's some guys where they have just a false sense of confidence where they're comfortable to do whatever, regardless of whether or not they're qualified to do so. Social media there's a lot of people on social media like that, right? They're giving the advice and they haven't even been there yet, right? It's they're missing the whole point. It's the hero is supposed to go, accomplish the task and then come back and tell everyone about it, right? Yeah. And then now everybody wants to skip that part. They just want to say, oh, I've got the answers. Even though I haven't been there, I've got the answers for it, which really bugs me about social media. But so for me, being qualified for jiu-jitsu, it still took me a lot to just throw myself out there. Even my Facebook page, I had a blog for 4 years or something. And it took me it took me like 3 years or something to actually put a Facebook page up because I was so weirded out by it.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge. And then as far as the weirdest stuff, I don't know, weird, man. I'll tell you the thing that I think is so funny is the trolls. You know, because YouTube's a hateful place.
It is.
Right? You know,
Holy
for the
shit.
most part, most of the stuff that comes on my videos is good, but the YouTube, man, like you'll get on there sometimes and like, is cussing and saying bad stuff, is that okay on here?
Of course.
Okay, I'm just
Absolutely.
making sure, man. I don't want to say so.
I appreciate that. I really
I've
do.
already cussed I've already said like three words anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter at this point. But when he like got on all of my posts and was like, "You big chip tooth faggot," right? Like that was it. I was like, "Oh man, he's really upset about this," and he just like went on like multiple videos saying the same thing. And then like you've had people that'll just like just say a move won't work, and I'm like, man, just like I don't mind if you criticize it. Just give me something to work with. Why do you think it won't work? You know what I mean? But so that kind of that sort of hateful, just I'm throwing shit out there because I've got nothing better to do with my life kind of thing is kind of the sort of weird or unfortunate occurrence of social media.
It is pretty interesting to like you run up on people like that and post up on Facebook, or we do throw up the occasional YouTube video and whatnot, but some of the ones on the Facebook is just kind of just out there, man. Like I like the ones like, oh, that wouldn't work, I'd gouge his eyeball out. I'm like, what? I don't think it's gonna work, man. Really don't.
Oh my god.
If you're getting choked unconscious, my last thoughts are not, oh, put your thumb in his eyeball.
Well, and again, that's from someone that's never actually trained, right?
Exactly.
Like that's like, I would just do this. I'm like, oh, sure you would, man. Like, try that. Like I was watching, what was it? Have you ever seen those videos with the bald like Wing Chun dude? That's really entertaining.
Master Wong, that guy.
Master Wong, dude, he's so much fun to watch. Like, I obviously a lot of the stuff I don't necessarily agree with the execution, but it's just like, we got problem. Like it's so much fun to watch him. But he like did like a guillotine defense or something. Someone like posted on Reddit, and I was like, and you're watching it and you're like, dude, that's not that won't work. Like that just, if you get a guy who's got a really good guillotine, that just isn't happening. Like, sorry. It looks cool. Like, and I really like appreciate the enthusiasm that goes into that. He's a heck of a entertainer, but it's like that won't work.
Yeah, a lot of them I think are also, it's the stand still while I demonstrate the defense type thing too. Like, oh, he throws a guillotine on me, he's not going to choke me. If I just do this, this, and this, and he doesn't move at all, it's going to work.
Yeah, well, I mean, man, I'm starting to see that more in the jiu-jitsu realm. Like, you'll start to see these really like long like movement chains, which are really fun to watch and they're really interesting. But like sometimes like they have these really like they seem so one-off that it's like, I understand the movement application of it, but it's like as far as it actually being an effective sort of bread and butter movement, I'm like, oh man, you're basically getting into like katas and stuff now, I do agree with like movement based stuff where you have chain techniques that are based upon like very common occurring sort of movements, defenses, adjustments, whatever. But then when you get into these weird things where it's like, you know what I mean? You watch the video and you're like looking at it and you're like, no, I don't think so, man. Like it's just one of those weird things where it's hard to put your finger on what it is about the move, but there's a lot of those moves out there now where I'm like, man, like I feel like the move was made or put online not because it's an effective move or a good drill, but just because you want likes or you want people to like, share your shit because it looks cool. It's like, ooh, look at this, it's appealing to the eye.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, I think that what you're talking about, or at least that's what my brain's processing, you see them and they don't give a lot of active resistance. And that's something I try to talk about to my students is that I can show, my favorite sweep of all time is a scissor sweep. It's basic, it's to the point, and if you can time it right, you're going to hit it every time. And I try to tell them it's not going to look 100% pretty all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like maybe, training towards the whole, like if they start resisting, you're not going to get like this 30 move combo, like Killer Instinct, where you're just
right.
where
and there is something to like, because it's more than just the movement chains. Because like for instance, if you watch like Mayweather and some of these other guys do pads, a lot of times they have these really intricate, like if you don't know what you're watching, it just looks like they're just like slapping each other. But a lot of times what they're doing is there's cues set up where if I touch your elbow, you respond this way. If I touch your shoulder with the pad, you do this. And so a lot of times like there's these like movement chains that are based upon like adjustments, counters, things like that. And those are really helpful. The things that I'm talking about, it's just like where like, they're standing on the feet, the guy pulls out his lapel, he somehow like like flips over the guy, wraps the
Yeah.
lapel around his waist, and then somehow ends up in a berimbolo to the back take with a choke, and then stares at the camera. You're like, well, what? I don't know what this is. It's like, I mean, like you can watch and it looks really cool, but it's like, again, for a lot of these new guys that come in there, I feel like it's just almost like it's just distraction. It's like you get some young, like I had one of my white belts one time. He was showing me this move that he found, and he was like, "What do you think about this?" I'm like, "Well, it might work at some point. I'm not going to say it's not, because I don't like to say definites, but I was like, it's definitely not going to work for you right now."
Yeah.
I was like, "What you should do is this." You know what I mean? So.
Do you think getting caught up in like some of these crazy moves? Do you think it takes away from some of the progression of some white belts because they kind of focus on that, like, fuck guard pass, and if I can just berimbolo the shit out of everybody, then I don't have to, pass guard.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to like say like I'm knocking a particular position, because there's nothing wrong with
that was just my random.
Yeah, of course. No, of course, obviously, just that thing. But yeah, I think that sometimes it does, because it's like if you get on there, if you get online, a lot of times the things that, again, going back to this thing where people are looking for something that no one else has, right? I need this thing that nobody else has. But yet, when you watch most people, when you watch a good match with two roughly evenly skilled opponents, in most cases, what you see is like the same shit over and over again. There are some variations, there are some adjustments they're making, and there are some, some times where a person does pop out with something new. But in a lot of cases, you see like really common occurring techniques and movements. And it's like, again, this is when people are at like evenly matched with each other. And so like, but then you'll go online and you'll watch some of these techniques, and you're like, you'll see a technique that I've never seen hit in a competition at all, or even during a good roll with someone, And so I think that sometimes with these newer guys, the newer students, they really need to focus on like go watch a tournament match. What is being used, right? Because that's when like the stress is at its highest, when basically all the bullshit just goes out the window, and all you got left is like the fundamental stuff that you're going to be able to actually use.
Yeah.
And even if you look at like higher level matches, blue belts, purple belts, I mean, everybody posts their stuff on YouTube. Go watch it, right? That's what I tell my students to do. Don't go watch black belt matches. Go watch white belts and blue belts. Watch what they do when they compete. And it's like, oh, like they're just doing really simple stuff, right? And so to me, it's like it's better to have some of the simple movements and drill those things, thousands of times, rather than having a bunch of these like weird, cool looking moves where you can't use any of them, just because, again, they're just not necessarily as applicable to you at that current time.
Right. And going back to me jumping all over the place.
Right there.
So you're talking about people not knowing how to train, or people who've never trained. And,
sure.
But yet they're experts in their own field of study, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Do you and your team often go to like a Hooters or a B-Dubs to watch the UFC?
No, man, we've done it before. A lot of times we go to people's houses or stuff like that, like, where like, a small group will get together at the house or something, or like what we did at that bar, we rented the room and we watched the fights there.
Oh,
you know
wow.
what I mean? Like that, you know what I mean? So like we watched the fights in like the room in the back of the bar where we're private, we're closed off from everybody else. We could be with each other, because it's the most obnoxious thing to like, and I think it's where you're going, where you're at a bar and you have some goofball that's like trying to tell everybody like how to like fight, and like you've never fought before. You're just some guy that goes to the gym and you've got a tap out shirt. Like, good for you.
Yeah, that's like my favorite thing to hate on. Like that is my favorite subject to be a hater about is going to watch these the MMA events at your local wing place or whatever, and it just drives me up the fucking wall. And
that's brutal.
It is pretty bad. Like I will try to find the place where it's like, oh, it's a $5 cover to go watch it, as opposed to like, oh, you just like eat wings and you can watch it. It seems
sure.
Just
hopefully it cuts down a bit.
Yeah, it still just does not fail. That I'm like sitting there eating it, and, like eating my chicken wings because I have no other options to go watch the fight. Not even like streaming it online. And you got the guy screaming. And you're like, God dang it, this guy's probably never like fought anybody, maybe. And I'm not saying, everybody that goes in there has not been in a fight or whatnot, but it's still like it seems to be the loudest person is like the most ill-informed. I don't know why.
No, I absolutely agree. And when the few times that I do go from time to time to a bar type place with people to watch the fights, a lot of times I'll make sure not to wear any like mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu related anything. Like I'll have like just a regular t-shirt just so that I can sit back and sort of watch. You know what I mean? Like so this way no one like like sees jiu-jitsu or sees fighting or something like that. I'm like, oh, I just get to watch these people and see how it's almost like watching like the National Geographic. You're like watching a bunch of people scream and yell at something that they don't really understand very well.
Well, it's just like it's starting to get like football as well. Like, like, oh, that was my, if I was out there, I would have called this play. I'm like, dude, if I was out there, I'd probably be on my ass. Like, no, like question about it.
And see, that goes to ignorance because, you think, because there's a lot of people, like when you watch football on TV, right, you cannot appreciate how large and athletic these men are, right? Like, I remember when I was a kid going to a college football game and remember like a young teenager, right?
Yeah.
And I remember like going down there to like the little fence where they would come out of the bullpen or whatever. They're coming out and they're heading to the field. And you just see these fucking giants walk past, and you're like, holy crap, these dudes are huge. And you have no like idea of how big they are until you stand up next to one, and you're just like in awe about how large this man's arms and his head is or something, And then you imagine that dude's going to try to hit me for like an hour. You're like just over and over and over again, full speed. And so like people can say, oh, I mean, if I was in there, I'd done this. It's like, okay, dude, like you'd be done in one play. Like these guys would run you over and you get hit by a car. You're going to have to be, basically peeled off the field.
Yeah, and it's not like they're slow either, man. These guys move. All of them move.
Right, but because all of them move well, it looks like it's like, oh, because everybody's on the same playing field, right, as far as skill goes, it looks relatively, that doesn't look too hard. It's like watching two guys do jiu-jitsu. It's like watching two guys do MMA where you have two somewhat evenly matched opponents. You just can't really, if you've never been there before, you don't really get a grip on what it's like to to be in there. It's like the Meryl Streep comment, like it's not an art or whatever. It's like because she doesn't understand it, like she's never been in there. She doesn't understand what it's like to, be more creative with like a physical muscle. It's more of a hard art rather than a soft art like acting or, music or something else.
No, that's very true. That is like, and of course I posted up a rant. Maybe I had a few beers in me when I did it, and I was like, nah, fuck it, and just deleted it. It's not worth it, but it's right. Like the people don't understand it. People who say it have never been there. And
are you talking about the martial art comment?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you have no idea. It's not right to say that type of stuff. And I was like, nah, it ain't even worth it.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
I would say I'm like very good at that. I'm like, read it back. I'm like, Jesus, I wrote that. All right, let's delete it.
Oh, I do that all the time. Like that's the best, man. Like what was it? Was it Abraham Lincoln would do that? He would write letters and he would just tear into these people. Yeah. Like, it would be like, I think it was one in particular, McClellan, and he's like getting ready to write and he's just like tearing into this dude, like, you friggin' idiot, right? And then he takes it, puts an envelope, puts it into a chest and never sends it to him. And then he writes an actual letter to him that's a lot more, hey man, sorry to hear everything didn't go so well. You doing okay? You know what I mean? Wow. Which is a much better approach, right? There's no reason to get on social media and like let her rip. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, what's the point? It's not going to help anybody, right? And you're not going to bring someone over to your side. It's no point.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly seem like the platform to start, like winning political debates or anything, because nobody's ever been like, well, that argument on Facebook was really eye-opening. I really do want to change my stance on it.
God, but it could be like if you said like, if you like, for instance, if let's say you and I were buddies on Facebook,
right?
Which we might be, if like we were on Facebook and we had a disagreement, if I said, man, like, why do you think that? Because that's what I'll do sometimes. Someone will post something and like they'll be angry about something and I'll disagree. But instead of saying you're wrong, right, and drawing that line in the sand where we both have to take up our stations on both opposite ends and basically just maintain the ship on both sides, regardless of whether or not we're wrong or right. Even if we know that at some point we're like, ooh, we're wrong, we can't jump to the other side. We have to stay over on that side. But if you say, hey, why? You leave the field open. You say, listen, if you come up with something good, I don't mind coming over to your side. But here's some of the stuff I think. And if you go in that more softer approach, you can allow people to. It may not happen in times. I've had several times where like someone's come up to me, and again, I don't come at them in an angry way, but I'll say, hey, like, why do you think that? We'll have a discussion about it, right? And then it'll be like a month later, and they'll be like, you know what, man, we were talking about it that one time, and you made a good point. And likewise, I've done the same thing where someone made a good point, and I was like, I never thought about it that way. And I kind of closing it and saying, I'm over here, you're over there. You know what I mean? And I feel like everybody on social media now, and just in general, just everybody wants to be right, rather than like, hey, like none of us really have this shit figured out, do we? So we're all trying to do our best. So you know what I mean? Like, what is the quote, man? It's Theodore Roosevelt. He said, it's something like this, and I could be butchering it, but it's like something to the effect of, if I could be right, 25% of the time, then I could achieve anything in life, right?
Yeah.
And so you think a guy that has achieved more than any of us probably ever will, he'll go down in the annals of history, right? This guy says that he's wrong, right? Like more than 75% of the time. So what on earth makes you think that you, being just a normal dude, right, you're right 100% of the time, And so I think that people sometimes have to come to grips with that and be okay to just be wrong, or at least leave the door open to, interpretations from other sides.
Yeah, especially if your opening to your counter argument is like "fuck you, idiot" or some shit.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
fucking idiot. Like, well, I'm definitely.
This conversation's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that was a good attempt. Sorry, that ain't gonna work on me. But but yeah. So before we head out here at Chewy, I was wondering if you could give us a plug for all where we can find you, your blog, your YouTube, everything. I want to know like where we could find you.
Okie doke. So if you're looking for me, you can find me. I'm probably the most active, I think, on YouTube. I post maybe 3 to 5 videos a week. And then I'm active on Facebook, so you can go to you can basically just put it in Chewjitsu into YouTube, Chewjitsu, and Facebook. My website blog, if you want to sign up for, I got a little email list. I send out messages and kind of keep people up to date with stuff. Is chewjitsu.net. I picked .net because back in the day there used to be a website called chewjitsu.com, which was like a food something or other, and that domain, the domain, yeah, it was like I think it was some guy that did jiu-jitsu and had it, and then but now like I've tried to buy the domain and they want like. It's like $1,000 or something for it. I'm like, shit, so yeah. So I was like, nah, man, I'll just wait a little bit. But yeah, chewjitsu.net, Chewjitsu, you can just put it in there and you'll find all that stuff and see me out there floating on the internet somewhere, talking with the damn camera.
Nice. Instagram, Twitter, all the same.
Yeah,
Chewjitsu with everything.
Chewjitsu with everything, man. If you're on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, you'll find it. I mean, I don't think that what's the other social media stuff, right? Like
MySpace or.
MySpace, yeah, the ghost town. Actually, me and my girlfriend, we looked at. Have you gone back to ever look at your old MySpace?
Yeah, fucking did, man.
How does that feel, right? You go back, you're like, oh, dude, I'm so glad this is like tucked away on the ghost town of the internet.
Yeah, no shit. I was like, oh my god, dude, like I need to time travel or something. Be like, dude, it's not cool to have like angsty Linkin Park music, when you're like 18 years old on your MySpace.
Exactly. And so this is why I try to cut some of these young kids a little bit of slack because you're like, yeah, I was doing some dumb shit on the internet when I was 18 too.
Oh, man. Dude, fucking painful memories. I was not a cool kid, I'll say.
You and me both, dude.
All right. Well, Chewy, I really do appreciate you coming on the show, man. I had a blast talking to you, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Cool to be here, man. Thanks for doing it.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, this has once again been an episode of the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. Remember the Pod Bros Podcast Network. Don't forget to go to podbros.com and find yourself another podcast you want to listen to. And don't forget to visit our sponsors, Trap and Roll Soap Company, as well as Tape Armor. I'm Rob, and we'll catch you guys next time.